Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt live inside of Studio West on this Friday, February 17th in the year of our Lord 2023. Good morning. Get up and going. The weekend is upon us. It's Friday. And President Biden is in great health. He's healthy and vigorous, says his doctor. And he jogged from Marine One, and we saw that picture. So everything's fine. You just take it to the bank. Nothing infirm about Joe Biden at all. You betcha. Everyone, every 80-year-old I know who doesn't want you to take the keys away says the same thing. I can see the eye chart. I can drive the car. I'm just as good as I was at 50. But Joe Biden, you believe it if you want, Mr. President, wishing you well. I am actually wishing John Fetterman a lot of goodwill and a lot of prayer. John Fetterman checked himself into Walter Reed, I guess, with severe depression. And that is such an awful thing, as David Brooks wrote about last weekend, losing a friend to the suicide brought on by years of struggling with severe depression. And I am not one who is going to point out what happened in the summer and the media covering for him. Rather, just pray that the guy gets better. It's nothing to make light of. It's not a broken leg. It's not at all amusing, and you can't go back and undo and overdo the election. He might want to retire and let Governor Shapiro appoint a replacement. Seems to me that his health might require that, but in the meantime, just pray for the guy. This week, Biden had to decide whether or not to shoot down mysterious objects, but he's fine. He's fine, according to the Washington Post. I'll be on the first look on the Washington Post at 9 a.m. this morning if you want to turn over to Post Live and watch that. And Ruth Marcus, Jonathan Capehart, and I will be talking about that. To me, it's classic Biden. Do nothing, then overreact. Do nothing, underreact completely to the Chinese spy balloon, then overreact and shoot down weather balloons, and then do nothing and say nothing. Now, he didn't quite say nothing. I'll come to that in a bit. He said he's going to call Xi to get to the bottom of the balloon incident. Yeah, that's got me very, very confident he'll get to the bottom of it, just like Wuhan Lab. The Pentagon's top China official, who is Michael Chase, Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for China. That's our top China official, the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for China, is going to Taiwan. And this I found in the Financial Times, so they spell defense differently. They spell it D-E-F-E-N-C-E in the Financial Times, but he's the American Assistant Secretary, Deputy Assistant Secretary of State. That'll show the Chinese invade our sovereign airspace, linger over our ICBM fields, and we send a Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for China to Taiwan. President Biden mumbled along that objects he shot down most likely tied to private companies or research. Oops. Also in the Washington Post this morning, in the wake of the Ukraine war, the U.S. and allies are hunting down Russian spies. You wonder what the intelligence analyst in Richmond, who was hunting down traditional Roman Catholics attending Latin Mass, might have been doing if they were hunting down Russian spies. Over the past year, as Western governments have ramped up weapons deliveries to Ukraine and economic sanctions against Moscow, the Post reports, U.S. and European security services have been waging a parallel, if left visible, campaign to cripple Russian spy networks. The German case, detailed above, which also involved the arrest of a senior official in the BND, Germany's Foreign Intelligence Service, followed roll-ups of suspected Russian operatives in Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, Austria, Poland, and Slovenia. 400 suspected Russian intelligence agents, many of them with diplomatic cover, expelled. So what do you know? The Russians are still spying. The Chinese spy a lot more than the Russians do, but all the bad guys spy, and the Iranians as well. New axis of evil, as I said to Peter Thiel this week. Peter Thiel, by the way, is going to be back in the news with that interview because at the end of it, we talked about crypto. And last night, crypto story dominated. I said, oh my gosh, it's happening again. First, the crypto story we know, Sam Bankman-Fried. The federal judge, named Lewis Kaplan, is presiding over his trial, and the young man is going to go to jail for a very long time. Took a look at the conditions of his bail and sees that SBF was encrypting messages and sending them to FTX's general counsel in the U.S. using a VPN to watch the Super Bowl. In other words, he's still an entitled rich kid who is not acting like he should be other than out. The judge might pull his bail. Now, he's going to go to jail eventually. So this is his 9 months at home eating frozen pizzas, and then you're going to jail. And he's acting irresponsibly. I really I just don't. I think he's going to try and string this out, but stringing it out if you're inside the federal prison is a lot different than stringing it out when you're at your parents' home in Palo Alto. Fugitive stablecoin founder Do Kwon accused of securities fraud in the United States. This is just great for crypto, by the way. Bitcoin's future depends on a handful of mysterious coders. How do you like that if you own Bitcoin? Wall Street Journal this morning. Andrew Chow started tinkering with Bitcoin in high school. Unknown to his parents, before he even had a bank account, the teenage coder set up a website, said, quote, I will work for Bitcoin. And indeed, he went there. He went there as did a handful of other people. But it turns out Bitcoin's current worth and future potential rests partly in the hands of the capital B Bitcoin, capital C Core, Bitcoin Core maintainers, a group who are chosen by their peers and are often vague about their whereabouts. A loose network of donors pays most maintainers' salary. Aided by a broader community of developers, the maintainers must ensure that the software remains compatible with the latest version of operating systems like Windows or Mac iOS, and it keeps up with transaction volume. All right, now it can be scary, this young man said. But like it gets easier over time, especially know what is dangerous to touch. In the past 18 months, 4 Bitcoin Core maintainers have stepped aside or turned over, citing burnout or legal risk. New maintainers are chosen in ad hoc votes after sometimes heated debates in the chat room. Developers typically type ACK or acknowledge to support a candidate or NAC, NACK to oppose one. Bitcoin is a unit of an account in a massive ledger of transactions called a blockchain. Identical copies of the 450 gigabyte database are stored on a network of tens of thousands of computers called nodes. An estimated 99% of nodes use some version of Bitcoin Core to record new transactions. Developers say Bitcoin Core's ubiquity is in tension with the cryptocurrency's goal of remaining decentralized. You know what's in tension with? Security of your investment. That's why, by the way, we have a sponsor, Birch Gold. Go to hughgold.com. When people tell you that Bitcoin is the new gold, look at them and say it doesn't really depend on a bunch of 20-year-olds deciding that they like me that day. All right, it's not up to the Bitcoin Core to decide what gold is at. Gold this morning is at $1,832. Now that's down $14 from yesterday, but it's up $140 from a few weeks ago. The 10-year Treasury jumped up to 3.843. Yesterday, the markets were very, very good. I mean, they had a very good, strong day because nothing bad happened, but don't know about what's going on in Europe this morning. Everything is red, but yesterday it was not a bad day to be a market investor. All right, the Dow went, well, actually yesterday was a bad day to be a market investor. The Dow went down 1.26%, the S&P went down 1.38%, and the NASDAQ went down 1.78%. That's what I get for not refreshing my browser. I'm sorry, you should have bought gold. You should have gone to hughgold.com, or Tech of Great Britain is flying to Ulster in a last-ditch effort to try and keep the Brexit together. Another top Putin official committed suicide. Yeah, you bet. Chernobyl 2.0 in East Palestine? No, it's not. Stop being crazy online. Microsoft's AI chatbot, artificial intelligence, another thing I talked about with Peter Thiel, is going off the rails, according to the Washington Post, and yelling at people. DoorDash, though, is doing just great. And I'll explain why when we come back. DoorDash. Everybody else is falling apart this Friday. Joe Biden's fine, and DoorDash is doing great. Stay tuned, America. Lots ahead on the Jonathan Capehart. But right now, it's time for Sonny Bunch, the official movie critic of the Hugh Hewitt Show. Sonny Bunch, you cannot talk me into going to Ant-Man. Am I wrong?
No, it's really not for anything but the hardcore, die-hard Marvel fan, Hugh. I got to be honest. This is. I feel like the wheels are starting to come off the Marvel car here a little bit. We're now entering Phase 5 of the Marvel movie. So famously, the Marvel movies have kind of sectioned themselves off into phases. Right, Phase 1. Were the first Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor movies, and Iron Man 2, I think, was also Phase 1. But those were the movies that built towards the first Avengers movie. And then, in Phase 2, they were building towards, the second Avengers movie, Phase 3 towards the third. And then Phase 4 was a weird one because this was after Avengers Endgame. You know, the series was kind of resetting. They lost a bunch of their normal stars, their big stars, Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans. They were done playing their various roles as Iron Man and Captain America. And Phase 4 was kind of adrift. There wasn't a whole lot of continuity there.
Do you think that the critics view that they peaked with Endgame and the Five Stones, and that after that it's all kind of
I mean, it's interesting because they were building toward a very specific thing, right? They were building toward this 2-part Avengers spectacular that was going to bring everyone from all the movies together, and they were all going to fight Thanos, who's the guy, you know, the big purple monster who was assembling the Infinity Gauntlet to wipe out half the universe, right? And it worked. It worked. It was really well done. It was everything was kind of put together very nicely. They had a plan. They executed it well, and they built toward it fine. And now they basically have had to restart and reset and start over again. And they just it feels like they're kind of running in place here. I mean, so Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is the new one. Paul Rudd is back as Ant-Man. Like the previous two Ant-Mans, this is a very funny movie. Unlike the previous two Ant-Mans, this is a movie that is very much ensconced in the rest of the Marvel universe. They're using this to launch everything else that's going to come for the next year plus, the next 2 years up through the next Avengers movie. We're building towards Avengers, the Kang Wars or some such. And that means we get our first real look at the villain for this cycle of Marvel movies. He's a character called Kang the Conqueror. He is a time-hopping madman who is out there wiping out timelines and time universes. He's been imprisoned in the quantum realm, and the foolish Ant-Man and the Wasp and their daughter, Ant-Man's daughter. It's not really the Wasp's daughter. Anyway, they travel down to the quantum realm to do some exploring, and they find Kang, who has built it doesn't matter. None of this matters to you. The whole point is that it's designed to basically play as an episode of television. This is the season premiere of the new season of the MCU. They're trying to get folks ready for the next 4 or 5 movies here, and as a result, it's just a mess. It's a horrible mess.
So Sonny, where was Kang when Thanos was running wild?
Well, he was, he hanging out, just hanging out, kind of in the background.
Did he dissolve into dust like Nick Fury and everybody else, or did he last in the quantum? Did Thanos not count on the quantum realm?
Well, great question, Hugh. I mean, I assume they'll address this at some point. Did Thanos' snap only wipe out one half of one of the timelines? Because the whole point of this series of Marvel movies is the multiverse, the quantum mechanics of everything. In other words, multiple timelines, and when you make a different choice, it branches off into something else. Right? This is the whole point of the Loki series, which is what this movie kind of ties into and out of. Starring Tom Hiddleston as Loki. It's on Disney Plus. Very, very popular. People loved it, and it's going to be back in the next couple months here, I think. But yeah, this is so that's a great question for Kang. Did half of the Kangs get wiped out, or was it just?
I've got a buddy Schroeder who is very useless generally, but he does know his comic book stuff. So he normally brings me up to speed. I ask him what just happened, or I'll go to see the Marvel, and he'll explain to me who the various people are because he collected them and he knew it when he was young. I don't really care about the timeline. I don't care if it makes sense. If the movie is self-contained and fun, I'll go to see it. But I never thought Ant-Man was that funny or fun, even though I like Paul Rudd a lot. So to the average viewer out there who's not obsessed with Marvel, but who hasn't been able to go to a movie for 6 weeks because there's just nothing, is this it?
No, I just don't. I mean, look, I think this movie's going to do fine at the box office because every Marvel movie does fine at the box office. But I do think that we are starting to hit a point where, audiences, where Marvel is less of a sure thing than it used to be for audiences, right? You've got a
Yep.
series of real misses here now. The Eternals was a big miss. The Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, I think was a pretty big miss. The Thor movie, Thor: Love and Thunder, a miss. Doctor Strange: Multiverse of Madness, a miss. Now, those movies all did well at the box office. Don't get me wrong. Eternals did the worst of all of them, but I think that was not expected to do as well. But these movies still did fine at the box office, right? Thor: Love and Thunder, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, and Doctor Strange: Multiverse of Madness. Those are all movies that grossed, I don't know, between $800 and $900 million, right? Or $800 and $1 billion, almost, some of them. So they're still doing fine, but I do think audiences are starting to get like, do I really have
But
to?
publicly traded companies have to meet quarterly estimates. Quarterly estimates are built on box office estimates, and doing fine is not good for an earnings call.
Yeah, I mean, well, Disney is interesting because they do have a big Disney Plus revenue stream, though they're still not quite making money on that yet, and also the parks. So box office means a little less to Disney than it does to some of these other companies. But I agree. I mean, look, this is going to start to be a problem because they've built an empire that relies on, $700 to $900 million per movie at the box office.
Are they ever just going to go with Nick Fury does something new and that it becomes sort of a spy? Is there a spy thread here? Because that's what Nick Fury did for a long time, was just spies.
Yeah, well, I think there is either a TV show or a movie coming out that is based on the Secret Wars, which I think is going to have a heavy Nick Fury element. That shape shifting scrolls. It doesn't matter. Again, I follow this stuff for a living, and I've watched all of the Marvel stuff. I cannot tell you right now what they are planning, what they've got coming out, just because I have myself kind of checked out a little bit. I don't care as much as I used to.
Well, I've got one question I've got to get you to answer. I've got you to fact check for me. Peter Thiel was my guest for an hour this week. Fascinating conversation. But at one point, we're talking about communist China and debating what to call it. And he said there hasn't been a movie with a China villain in it since 1997. The Last Emperor or Three Emperors or something like that. And I thought, I got to ask Sonny that. Is that correct?
Well, there was, I think you can officially look at the last one as being Red Corner, the Richard Gere movie, in which he plays a TV executive who goes to China and gets framed for murder, and winds up.
That's pretty wild, isn't it?
So that's basically the last one. I can't remember when that came out, if that was late 90s or early aughts. But yeah, that's pretty much the last one. Peter Thiel might be thinking of Kundun, the Martin Scorsese movie, which is kind of about the ravaging of Tibet. But yeah, no, I mean, China really it has not been treated villainously in a long time, and that's because American studios wanted the Chinese box office to be open to them.
If you read what he writes about the co-option of Hollywood, he is dead on. He also, by the way, says Republicans are co-opted by different forces, but Hollywood is co-opted by the box office. And I thought he actually just articulated what you've said a few times on this show in succinct fashion for a tech guy, which is, no one dare upset the Chinese anywhere, anytime. And that ain't going to work. Sonny Bunch has two podcasts, Across the Movie Aisle with Sonny Bunch and The Bulwark Goes to the Movies. They're both great fun. And you should follow Sonny on Twitter at Sonny Bunch. Read his reviews when they appear in the Post. And come right back for more of today's Hugh Hewitt Show. Fridays when we are lucky to recap the week that was in Congress. Good morning, Sarah. How's your Friday going?
Good morning. It's wonderful so far. Thank you.
All right. Give us a clue as to whether or not the Congress made progress this week towards a solution about the debt.
I think one sort of wrinkle in this conversation now is that there's conservatives who are interested in cutting defense spending, or at least taking a closer look at the Pentagon's budgets. But these rising tensions with China, the fact that we've seen these, unidentified objects potentially from China, we don't really have a lot of information about them, that has sort of steered the conversation in the direction that defense hawks want it to go, which is that maybe now is not a great time to cut spending. So in terms of what conservatives are pursuing, I think there was sort of a blow to their push to cut defense spending.
There was a bit in the president's remarks yesterday about informing Congress contemporaneously with the balloon issue. Does anyone you've interviewed this week think that they have been briefed contemporaneously about what is going on?
No, I think the primary complaint that lawmakers have had is that it took so long for the Biden administration to give members an update. Even then, the information that they originally got was sort of inadequate. I mean, the House lawmakers got an open source briefing a few days ago. They were still waiting on, some more information in a classified setting. Even in the classified briefings, lawmakers have come out with still a lot of questions about the origin of these items. It's unclear, for example, how the Biden administration can essentially rule out that the latest balloons belong to China, but then say that they have, nothing to share about the actual origin of the items. They know some things about the balloons because they're able to make that sort of definitive claim that they're not from China. So then the reasons why they're still withholding what they do know, I think, is vexing to a lot of lawmakers.
Vexing is an understatement. They sent Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor, out to talk to Joe Scarborough in a controlled environment in the old EOB. I don't blame him. I did that with Team Bolton and Team Pompeo as well. You go somewhere and they're expecting you not to push too hard. Well, Joe didn't push at all. And Jake said the other administrations missed these objects. I don't know if they mean Trump. I don't know if they mean Obama. I don't know if they mean Bush. But I know for sure that Ambassador O'Brien and Secretary Pompeo, former director of the CIA, both have told me on this show they never got briefed. So administration means nothing, Sarah. No, it means the DOD, right?
Right. But also is that not an indictment of their own intelligence capabilities then to say other administrations missed these because they've been here all along? Well, Biden's been in office for more than 2 years now. So for 2 years, Biden's Pentagon and missed these objects along with, I guess, the Trump administration. And so, it's not like Biden came into office and immediately started taking down balloons that Trump ignored. If they're saying those balloons have been up there all along, then the Biden administration also missed them for a few years. And like you said, anyone who's been in a position of power in the Trump administration has denied ever encountering anything like this in the U.S. airspace.
I'm talking with Sarah Westwood, who is with the DC Examiner. You can follow Sarah on Twitter at Sarah C. Westwood, and you should because she's got great stories. I want to close by asking you about the Jim Jordan investigation. I had Chairman Jordan on this week, and I asked him, when are you going to get Brennan, Comey, and Clapper up there with Pompeo? Because they were all there at the 1-6-17 meeting. And Jim's, who's a friend, went this way and that way and didn't tell me. Do we have any idea of their hearing schedule and when the witnesses are showing up? Because he sure wouldn't tell me. Has he told you?
No, he is not. I have talked to staff on that committee this week. I think that they're still figuring out how to approach this investigation. It's really broad. There's a lot of different lines of inquiry that they can chase down. Right now, what they're working on is conducting these transcribed interviews behind closed doors with some of the whistleblowers who have come forward anonymously. Not all of them are going to want to testify in an open hearing because many of them are still employed by the Bureau. So right now, I think they're sort of gathering string in these private interviews. And I think there's sort of an acknowledgement that maybe that first hearing could have been more effective, that it was very long. The 2 panels of witnesses prevented lawmakers from asking questions until, more than 2 hours into the hearing. So I think we might see some adjustments the next time that committee has.
They ought to go to the 1-6 committee and take a lesson on how to manipulate coverage. You go with your best witness, you start with them, you let them talk, and then you ask questions. That's it. Right. And maybe. Yeah. Now, by the way, do you have any comment on when women are in their prime?
I hope I'm still in my prime. I don't know about that.
Did you check with Don Lemon? I mean, I want you just to talk to every woman in Congress about when they're in their prime, because I sure wouldn't go there, but Don did. And so I'm just curious if was that a topic at all yesterday in the Hill?
You know what? I heard from a lot of people, a lot of jokes. It was just so cringeworthy. You couldn't look away. So I think everybody had to make a dig at that.
It was. That's well put, as always, from Sarah C. Westwood. So cringeworthy, you couldn't look away. Sarah, thank you. Have a great weekend. Don't go anywhere, America. The Hillsdale Dialogue is straight ahead right here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. All things Hillsdale are found at hillsdale.edu. You'll find me at Washington Post Live right after the show today, so tune into that as well as to the Hillsdale Dialogue straight ahead here on the Hugh Hewitt Show.